Captain Elias Thorne had seen many space stations in his years of travel, but Eos Prime felt different from the moment he docked. The station floated in the quiet darkness between two twin suns, its metal hull gleaming with streaks of cosmic dust. Unlike the busy, chaotic ports he was used to, Eos Prime carried a calm, almost deliberate hum. The docking bay was quiet, save for the soft hiss of air vents and the occasional clang of maintenance robots. Elias stepped out of his ship, the soles of his boots making light echoes on the polished floor. His eyes scanned the surroundings, noting the alien architecture that curved and twisted in ways that seemed to defy geometry. There were bridges that looped into themselves, corridors that floated slightly above the floor, and doors that opened before one even reached them. He admired the technology and design but remained focused on his mission, a routine supply delivery and inspection. As he walked toward the storage wing, a sudden squelch of water drew his attention. Elias turned sharply and froze for a moment. There in the corner of the bay stood a figure unlike any he had seen. She was small and delicate, her skin glimmering slightly under the bay's lights, and her eyes reflected a curiosity that made Elias pause. But what caught his attention more was her state. Water dripped from her hair and clothes, pooling on the floor around her. Elias frowned. The station's weather systems were supposed to be tightly controlled. It was impossible for water to appear in the docking bay without a malfunction. He took a cautious step closer. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice carrying just enough authority to demand attention without being harsh. The figure looked up, startled. Her ears, slender and slightly pointed, twitched in surprise. She tried to speak, but the words came out in a foreign language. Elias's universal translator picked up the nuances, and soon he heard her faint, polite request. Water help?" Elias nodded. "I can help with that." She hesitated, her glowing eyes scanning him with an almost cautious intelligence. Then, as if deciding he could be trusted, she stepped closer. Elias noticed her hands were delicate, almost translucent, and how her movements carried both grace and a certain nervous tension. She gestured toward a maintenance area, where a small basin and towels were stacked neatly. Elias followed her. He carried himself with calm efficiency, but inside he felt a rush of curiosity. He had encountered many alien species before, but few interacted with humans in such a personal, almost vulnerable way. He reminded himself to stay respectful. This was not a human culture, and manners here mattered as much as skill. When they reached the basin, the alien maid, Elias learned her name was Lyra, gestured for him to help her clean off the grime and water from the malfunction. Elias glanced at the hydro system, noting a small leak that must have caused her to get soaked. He quickly inspected it, adjusting a valve to stop the drip. "Better?" he asked. Lyra nodded, a soft, relieved sound escaping her lips. She began using the towels to dab at her wet clothing. Elias noticed the way she carefully handled the fabric, treating each piece as if it were fragile machinery. He couldn't help but admire her precision. "Your species, you handle water differently, don't you?" he asked gently, careful not to offend. Lyra tilted her head, then nodded slowly. Her eyes seemed to shine with approval at his careful wording. She gestured toward her skin, which shimmered slightly as it dried. Elias could see that water affected her differently than it would a human, and he adjusted his approach, offering a second towel without touching her. "This is fascinating," he said aloud, more to himself than to her. "Humans usually. We just dry off and move on, but you, there's a method." Lyra's lips curved into something that might have been the alien equivalent of a smile. She seemed pleased to have her rituals respected. Elias felt a quiet sense of accomplishment, realizing that his human instinct to help had bridged the gap between worlds. As the last of the water was absorbed, Lyra stepped back, looking at him with a mixture of gratitude and curiosity. She gestured toward the maintenance system again, indicating that all was now in order. Elias gave a slight bow, a gesture he hoped conveyed respect without overstepping. For a moment, the two of them simply regarded each other. A quiet understanding formed between them, a recognition that sometimes humanity's greatest strength was not in weapons or technology, but in simple acts of kindness and attentiveness. Elias turned back to the docking bay, ready to continue his inspection, but he could feel Lyra's eyes following him. Something told him this was the beginning of a story much larger than a routine supply run. In the vastness of space, two strangers had met under unexpected circumstances, and in that meeting, Humanity had already begun to shine, and somewhere deep in the hum of Eos Prime, the station seemed to acknowledge it, as if the walls themselves had learned to value the human heart. Elias returned to his inspection, but his mind kept drifting back to Lyra. There was something about the way she carried herself, so careful yet graceful, that captured his attention. The station was quiet now, the soft hum of machinery filling the background and the occasional beep of monitors punctuating the stillness. He knew he had work to do, but curiosity drew him back toward the maintenance area where Lyra had been. When he arrived, he saw her standing near a row of intricate machines, her hands moving with precision as she adjusted small controls. She didn't notice him at first, absorbed in her work, but when she did, her eyes lit up with a mixture of surprise and something that looked like cautious relief. Elias smiled. "Your species is very precise," he said gently, keeping his tone friendly. "I can see why the station runs so smoothly." Lyra tilted her head, her hair still slightly damp from the earlier incident. She nodded, then hesitated before speaking. Her voice was soft but carried a clarity that the translator rendered perfectly. "We have rituals. For work, for cleanliness, even for small repairs. Everything has its method." Elias listened carefully, impressed by the level of discipline and mindfulness in her explanation. "That's admirable," he said. "Humans usually rush things. We fix problems, then move on. We don't always notice the small details." She blinked, and he thought he saw a glimmer of amusement in her eyes. She gestured toward a small basin nearby, then to herself, indicating that she still needed attention to fully dry and clean the last traces of water. Elias immediately understood. Helping her wasn't just a favor, it was respecting her culture. "I can help again," he offered. Lyra hesitated for a moment. Asking for such help from an outsider was unusual in her culture. But something about Elias, his calm manner, his attentiveness, made her trust him. She nodded slightly, and he stepped forward, careful to keep a respectful distance. As he handed her a fresh towel, he realized how different her physiology was from anything he had encountered. Her skin seemed to shimmer slightly, almost as if it absorbed the light in tiny, gentle waves. Touching her directly could have been a mistake, so he simply held the towel so she could take it. She accepted it gracefully, dabbing at her damp hair and clothing with care. "This is very precise work," he said, watching her. "I've never seen anyone approach simple things with such attention." Lyra's lips curved into a faint smile. She nodded, and then, for the first time, Elias noticed the slight tension in her shoulders ease. The earlier embarrassment seemed to melt away, replaced by a quiet confidence that he found both humbling and inspiring. "Your species is kind," she said softly. "Not all would help like this." Elias felt a warmth in his chest. This was why humans often made lasting impressions across the galaxy. Not through force or wealth, but through simple acts of empathy, courage, and understanding. "We try," he said lightly, smiling. "Sometimes it works. Sometimes it surprises even us." As Lyra finished drying herself, she gestured toward a small device on a nearby workbench. It was part of the station's environmental controls, a complex array of sensors and pumps. A quick scan revealed minor water damage from the earlier hydro system malfunction. Elias nodded toward it. "I think I can fix that before it causes any trouble," he said. Lyra watched intently as he examined the device, his hands moving with both confidence and care. The repairs were not difficult for him, but he made sure to explain each step, blending human logic with consideration for her methods. By the time the repair was complete, Lyra's expression had shifted from curiosity to admiration. "You understand," she said. "Even though you are not of my kind, you understand the importance of precision." Elias smiled again. "We humans have a way of adapting. We like to learn, especially from those who know more than we do." She nodded, clearly considering this. For a moment there was silence between them, filled only by the soft mechanical hum of the station. Then Lyra spoke again, more confidently this time. You are different. Most humans I have observed. They rush, they do not notice. You notice," Elias chuckled lightly. "I suppose that's one thing humans are good at. Paying attention. Sometimes it helps more than speed or strength." Lyra's eyes seemed to glow a little brighter. She stepped closer to the basin, then gestured to him again. It was a quiet request for his continued assistance, not just with the cleaning but with understanding. Elias understood. This was not just about water or hygiene, it was about trust, about bridging the gap between species. And in that moment, he realized that this simple act of helping an alien maid had opened a door to friendship, respect, and perhaps a deeper connection that neither of them could yet fully understand. Elias nodded silently, ready to continue helping, knowing that in the vast reaches of space, humanity's greatest strength was often its heart. The air in the maintenance room was warm, scented faintly with the metallic tang of machinery and the clean freshness of recycled water. Lyra moved gracefully among the consoles, her hands lightly brushing over surfaces as if feeling for vibrations. Elias watched, fascinated. Every movement seemed deliberate, purposeful, and yet natural. He realized he had never seen a being treat technology as part of themselves, rather than as separate objects to manipulate. "You handle your machines like living things," he said, curious. "Is that common for your kind?" Lyra paused and looked at him. Her eyes, the color of liquid amber, seemed to reflect both amusement and caution. "We treat all things with respect," she explained. "Machines, water, tools, even the smallest task is part of the whole. Neglect one and the others may fail." Elias nodded slowly, impressed. "Humans tend to focus on results," he admitted. "If it works, we move on. We don't always think about the small parts or the care it needs." Her gaze softened. "That isn't interesting. Humans are brave, yes, but you are impatient. You solve problems quickly, but often without full thought." "Sometimes," Elias said, shrugging. "Sometimes it works. Sometimes not." He smiled, remembering past mistakes and lucky successes. "But I think we are capable of learning. That is one advantage we have." Lyra's eyes brightened slightly. "You adapt." She repeated the word as if tasting it for the first time. "You learn from what you see, from what you experience." "That is unusual." Elias smiled. "It's one thing humans do well. Adaptation, curiosity, observing and adjusting. That is how we survive no matter where we go." Lyra moved closer to a small water basin nearby, still damp from the earlier incident. She ran her fingers through the shallow water, watching the ripples form and fade. "And yet, you are careful. You do not rush carelessly, that is rare." Elias followed her gaze. "Sometimes being careful is just another way to survive," he said. "And sometimes it helps you build trust with others. Like now." Lyra nodded, a faint smile playing on her lips. She seemed to consider this carefully, then gestured toward a set of small panels lining the wall. "I will show you something," she said. "A part of our rituals. Not many outsiders see this." Elias felt a spark of curiosity. He moved closer, respecting her space, his mind alert to every gesture and expression. Lyra opened the panels, revealing a series of small devices and water channels arranged in an intricate pattern. "This is part of how we prepare for cleaning and maintenance," she explained. "Water flows in specific ways. Tools are handled in a careful order. Each step is measured, precise. Mistakes are uncomfortable." Elias studied the setup, realizing how elaborate it was. "That is impressive," he said. "Humans might see it as overcomplicated, but I can see why it works. Everything has its place and you treat it with care." Lyra nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Yes, care is important. Respect is important. Even small things, when done with thought, can make a difference." Elias looked at her, sensing the depth of her words. He realized that what humans often valued, speed, efficiency, results, was balanced here with mindfulness, with a connection to the world around them. He felt a quiet admiration for her species. "Your approach, it is something humans could learn from," he said sincerely. "We often forget the details, but you never do." Lyra glanced at him, her eyes reflecting a warmth he hadn't seen before. "And yet, humans have courage, boldness. You face things without fear, even when you do not fully understand. That is rare." Elias chuckled lightly. "We do get ourselves into trouble sometimes. But yes, courage is part of what we do, and we often have to rely on others, on teamwork, on trust. That is how we survive." She tilted her head, studying him. "Then perhaps humans and my people are similar in some ways, different yet alike. You adapt, we care. Together we could be strong." Elias felt a surge of hope. Here in a quiet maintenance room, he saw a bridge forming between two species, not through weapons, not through domination, but through understanding and respect. He realized that his actions, simple acts of attentiveness, empathy, and patience, had already begun to create connections that could reach far beyond this small space. Lyra reached out to adjust a small device, her hand steady and confident. Elias stepped close, observing, ready to assist if needed. For the first time, he felt a sense of partnership, not just as a visitor, but as someone who could contribute meaningfully to a world far different from his own. And as he watched her, he understood something fundamental. Humanity's strength was not in being the fastest, the strongest, or the most powerful. It was in the ability to care, to learn, and to connect. In the vast reaches of space across species and stars, that simple truth could make all the difference. Lyra looked at him once more, and this time, there was no hesitation in her expression. A quiet trust had been formed, and in that silent understanding, a new journey was beginning, one that would challenge both of them and reveal the remarkable potential of human empathy and ingenuity. The hum of the station had a steady rhythm, almost like a heartbeat, but suddenly it was broken by a sharp hiss and a spray of water from the ceiling. Elias yelped and jumped back just in time to avoid being drenched again. Lyra's eyes widened, and she leapt aside with surprising agility, her delicate frame moving faster than Elias would have expected. "It's the hydro system," she shouted, her voice sharp but calm. "Pressure is rising too fast." Elias scanned the room quickly. Water was beginning to pool on the floor, reflecting the bright lights above. He could see the faint shimmer of the walls and the equipment beginning to sparkle under the spraying droplets. This was no ordinary leak. It was a sudden surge that could damage the delicate machinery if not stopped immediately. "Stay back," Elias said, his voice firm but controlled. He dashed to the control panel, scanning for a way to relieve the pressure. His fingers moved quickly over the alien interface, a combination of buttons, touch panels, and levers unlike any human system he had seen. Lyra moved closer to him, pointing at a valve that seemed to be the source of the problem. "You must twist it counterclockwise." "Slowly," she instructed. Elias nodded, following her directions. His hands moved with precision, careful not to make sudden motions that could worsen the surge. The water hissed and sprayed, splashing around him, soaking the edges of his uniform. But he remained focused, breathing steadily as he turned the valve, listening to the system as it responded. Lyra's hands were steady as well, guiding him and adjusting nearby components to prevent secondary leaks. Despite the chaos, she never panicked, her calm presence giving Elias confidence. Together they formed an unspoken rhythm, human and alien working as one to manage the crisis. The water surged again, higher this time, and Elias had to duck to avoid a stream hitting his head. He glanced at Lyra, who was crouched beside a panel, her glowing eyes watching his every move. For a moment he felt a rush of admiration. She was tiny but incredibly capable, and in her determination he could see the strength of her species. "Almost there," she called out, her voice steady despite the spraying water. Elias tightened the valve one last turn. Slowly the pressure began to drop, and the spraying decreased to a gentle leak. He exhaled in relief, his heart still racing. "Got it," he said, his voice carrying both relief and triumph. Lyra nodded, her expression softening. She wiped a few stray droplets from her arms with a small cloth, then looked at him with what could only be described as respect. "You handled that well," she said. "Most humans would panic. You stayed calm." Elias shrugged, a small smile forming on his face despite being drenched. "Humans have a way of facing the unexpected. We get nervous, yes, but we also find ways to act. That's how we survive out here." She tilted her head, studying him for a moment. "And yet you did not rush blindly. You listened. You followed instructions carefully. That is rare. It's not just me," Elias said. "It's also learning from others. Listening is part of it. Trust, teamwork. Those are the things that make survival possible." Lyra nodded, her expression thoughtful. She gestured toward the small pool of water on the floor. "You also helped prevent damage. Not only to me, but to the station, that is impressive." Elias glanced around. A few other station personnel had quietly arrived, watching from a safe distance. He could see admiration in their expressions. None of them interfered. They were witnessing something uncommon, a human showing not just skill but composure and understanding. "It seems humans can be exceptional," Lyra said quietly, almost to herself. "Not because of strength, but because of thought and care." Elias smiled at her. "Sometimes that's all it takes. Small actions done carefully can prevent disaster. That's a lesson we humans learn early and carry with us." The hydro system hissed one last time, then settled into its normal rhythm. Elias wiped his hands on his uniform, dripping water onto the floor. Lyra moved closer, checking the repaired panels, and nodded approvingly. The station is safe. Thanks to you. Elias shook his head lightly. We did it together. You guided me. I just followed your lead. For a few moments they simply stood there looking at the calm water in the basin and the quiet machinery around them. The crisis was over, but something had shifted. Elias could see it in Lyra's eyes, a spark of confidence and a deeper trust in him. The human's courage, combined with his willingness to adapt and listen, had made a lasting impression. You are different from other humans, Lyra said finally, a soft glow in her expression. You show respect, you act with care. That makes you valuable. Elias laughed softly, feeling a warm pride. I guess that's one way to be human. Lyra's smile widened slightly. Yes, and it is. Good. The two of them looked around the maintenance room, now calm and orderly again. Outside, the station continued its quiet rhythm, unaware of the small drama that had just unfolded. But for Elias and Lyra, the moment marked the beginning of something new, a friendship, a partnership, and a growing understanding of what humans could bring to even the most alien places. And in the quiet hum of EOS Prime, it seemed the station itself recognized it. Humans could surprise, help, and inspire, even far from their home world. After the hydro system incident, the maintenance room was calm again. The soft hum of the station seemed almost like a sigh of relief. Elias wiped his hands on a cloth and looked at Lyra. She was carefully inspecting the repaired panels, her movements precise and thoughtful. You handled that really well, she said softly, her voice carrying a note of genuine admiration. Most visitors would have panicked. Elias shrugged, smiling. I've had practice. Humans learn to adapt quickly when things go wrong. But you guided me through it. I couldn't have done it alone. Lyra tilted her head, considering his words. There was a quiet intelligence in her gaze, and Elias felt that she was weighing the meaning of teamwork and trust. Perhaps humans are capable of more than we thought, she said finally. You learn from others, and yet you take initiative. That is unusual. Elias laughed lightly. I guess that's one way to describe it. Humans notice, learn, adapt, and sometimes surprise themselves, and everyone else. Lyra's expression softened. She gestured toward the maintenance consoles. You see, my work involves more than cleaning and repairs. I also monitor systems, predict issues, and maintain balance throughout the station. It is demanding. Elias nodded, intrigued. That sounds complicated, but it also sounds like something humans could help with. Observation, problem solving, quick decisions. We do that well. She raised an eyebrow. You think humans could understand our methods? I think humans can learn anything if they try. And if they care, Elias replied. He felt a quiet pride in his voice. It's not just about knowledge, it's about empathy, paying attention, seeing the needs of others. Lyra's eyes shimmered slightly. Empathy. Yes, that is rare. Many creatures act only for themselves. Humans, you notice. You help. That is remarkable. Elias glanced at the tools and panels around them. Maybe we can work together to make the station better. Not just repair it, but improve it. Mix your precision with human creativity. It might even prevent accidents like today. Lyra considered this carefully, then she nodded slowly. You wish to help. Not because you are required to, but because you want to. That is unusual. That's what humans do, Elias said simply. We notice problems. We act. Sometimes it's instinct. Sometimes it's curiosity. But usually, it's because we care. Lyra's expression held a quiet warmth. She handed him a small, delicate tool, one that required careful handling. If we are to improve the station, you must follow instructions carefully. This is precise work. Elias accepted it, examining it thoughtfully. I can do that. Humans are good with tools, and we like to learn new things. The two of them began working side by side, combining their strengths. Lyra demonstrated a delicate sequence of steps for adjusting the hydro system and regulating pressure sensors. Elias observed carefully, noting the subtle movements that ensured balance and efficiency. Then he applied his own methods, suggesting slight adjustments based on human logic and experience. Lyra watched him intently. At first, she seemed skeptical, but when a small modification stabilized a previously unstable valve, her eyes widened in approval. "You see connections we often overlook," she said. "That is valuable." Elias smiled. Humans often notice patterns quickly. Sometimes it's instinct, sometimes it's experience. Either way, it can help. As they continued, a quiet rhythm formed between them. Machines hummed, tools clinked, and the small pool of water from the earlier incident was gradually drained. Their collaboration was seamless, a blend of human adaptability and alien precision. Station personnel who passed by paused, quietly observing the teamwork. They were clearly impressed, though they did not interfere. After some time, Lyra leaned back slightly, looking at the systems they had adjusted together. "The station is improved," she said, "not just repaired. You have contributed more than expected." Elias nodded, feeling a quiet pride. "We make a good team. Humans learn quickly, but we also work well with others who are willing to teach and guide us." Lyra's glowing eyes met his. "You are not like others I have met. You care, you notice, you act. That is rare in outsiders. Perhaps humans are worthy allies." Elias laughed softly. "We like to think so, but it takes two to make a team. I couldn't have done it without your guidance." For a moment, the two of them stood in quiet appreciation of their work. The station hummed steadily around them, the lights reflecting off the polished panels and smooth surfaces. Outside, the soft glow of the twin suns bathed the station in golden light, a reminder of the vast universe waiting beyond the walls. Lyra finally spoke, her voice carrying a hint of excitement. "Perhaps we can do more, explore further, predict issues before they happen, make this station better than before. Together." Elias smiled. "That's the idea. Humans are always ready for a challenge, and we always learn from those who know more than we do." A quiet trust had formed between them, stronger than either had expected. In a station filled with advanced technology and alien customs, a human and an alien maid had begun something extraordinary. Their partnership was not just about repairs or survival, it was about understanding, respect, and the potential for growth. And in that moment, Elias realized that humanity's greatest strength was not just in exploration or intelligence, but in the ability to connect, to adapt, and to inspire. Even in the farthest reaches of space, across species and worlds, a simple act of care could create lasting bonds and change everything. The hum of EOS Prime had returned to its normal rhythm, but the quiet energy in the maintenance room had changed. Elias and Lyra worked side by side, their movements synchronized after days of small tasks, repairs, and careful observation. Every adjustment and tweak felt smoother, almost effortless, as though the station itself had begun to respond to their partnership. "You handle the systems well," Lyra said, her eyes glowing faintly under the soft lights. "But more than that, you bring calm. That is unusual for humans." Elias smiled. "Calm comes with experience. Humans learn quickly when we face problems, and sometimes we find it easier to act if we focus on helping others rather than panicking." She nodded thoughtfully. "Helping others, yes, that is remarkable. Most species do not think beyond themselves." Elias glanced at the consoles, checking the sensors and reading the slight fluctuations in pressure and temperature. "It's not about strength or speed," he said. "Sometimes survival and success are about paying attention, listening, and being willing to act when it matters most." Lyra's eyes shimmered, as if the words had settled deep inside her. She gestured toward a central panel. The administrators will want to see the improvements. They do not always notice small adjustments, but they appreciate outcomes. I think they will be impressed. Elias followed her to the central control hub. The administrators were a mix of species, their expressions carefully neutral at first. But as they observed the newly repaired and enhanced systems, their attention shifted. Panels that had previously flashed faint warnings were now stable. Energy readings normalized and the water pressure systems maintained balance. One of the administrators, a tall being with violet skin and angular features, stepped forward. The hydrosystem fluctuations should have caused delays and damage, he said. Yet the station remains fully operational. How? Elias spoke simply, with quiet confidence. I worked with Lyra. We combined her knowledge of the station with human methods of problem solving. Careful observation, small adjustments, and teamwork prevented damage before it could occur. There was a brief pause, then a ripple of murmured approval. Lyra. Say's shoulders straightened. She glanced at Elias, her expression reflecting respect and gratitude. He listens, he adapts. He helps without taking control, that is, rare. The administrators looked at Elias again, curiosity mingled with admiration. One of them, a smaller, rounder figure, asked, "You are human, correct? How do you manage this calmly when the systems are unstable?" Elias shrugged lightly. Humans are flexible. We learn from experience, and when you focus on helping others rather than worrying only about yourself, it is easier to make good decisions. Another administrator nodded slowly. That is an interesting perspective. Your species may have value beyond physical or technological capability. Your mind, your approach, it is unusual but effective. Elias felt a quiet pride. This was not about glory or recognition. It was about showing that humans could thrive even in alien environments by thinking, observing, and caring. Lyra's presence had made it possible, guiding him and offering insight into the station's systems. Together, they had proven that collaboration could achieve what individuals could not. Lyra stepped closer to Elias, her voice soft. You have shown that humans are more than we expected. You adapt, you listen, you act with care. That is valuable, even among outsiders, Elias smiled at her. And you have shown that your species has incredible skill, discipline, and precision. Working with you has been a privilege. The administrators, having observed the interaction, seemed to recognize the partnership as well. A subtle shift occurred in their demeanor. Respect was no longer reserved for titles or rank. It was earned through action, collaboration, and the demonstration of skill and understanding. Lyra gestured toward a small display showing the station's metrics. We could continue improving, she said, predicting minor issues before they happen, preventing small failures, creating smoother operation. Together we could make the station better than it was before. Elias nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Humans are always ready for challenges, he said. And we learn fastest when working with those who know more than we do. That's how we grow. The administrators exchanged glances. The taller one finally spoke. It appears your human, Elias, has qualities that complement this station well. Calm judgment, careful action, and the ability to collaborate with other species. You have demonstrated the value of humans beyond expectation. Elias felt a quiet warmth spread through him. Recognition was not why he acted. Helping and understanding were reward enough. Yet seeing the administrators appreciate his efforts and Lyra's guidance confirmed what he had already known. Humans could make a difference anywhere, even on a station light years from Earth. Lyra smiled, a soft glow in her eyes. We have worked well together. I have learned from you, as you have learned from me. That is the beginning of something greater. Elias returned the smile. It is, humans and others. We can accomplish remarkable things when we respect each other and work together. That is how we thrive. For a moment, the maintenance room was quiet again, filled only with the soft hum of the station. Yet in that stillness, something had changed. Elias had proven that humans were more than just visitors. They could be partners, problem solvers, and allies. Lyra had proven that guidance and precision could enhance even the human spirit. Together they had made a small world better, and in doing so, demonstrated what humanity could achieve across the stars. And somewhere in the quiet corridors of Eos Prime, A small truth echoed courage, care, and collaboration could inspire respect, build trust, and change the way worlds saw humans forever. The soft hum of EOS Prime felt warmer that morning, as if the station itself had sensed the quiet pride and accomplishment in its halls. Elias Thorne stood near the docking bay, his ship ready for departure. The maintenance room, once a place of minor chaos and careful repairs, now felt like a quiet testament to teamwork and understanding. Lyra approached, her movements calm and measured, the faint shimmer of her skin catching the light. "You are leaving soon," she said softly, her voice carrying both thoughtfulness and something like melancholy. Elias nodded, adjusting the straps on his bag. "Yes, my next stop awaits, but I couldn't leave without saying goodbye properly. You've taught me much here, Lyra, and I hope I have done the same for you." She studied him, her glowing eyes reflecting the soft ambient light. "You have done more than teach. You have shown humans are capable of care, of thought, of trust. You made a difference here." Elias smiled, feeling a warmth that had little to do with the station's temperature. "It wasn't just me. It was us working together. Humans are good at learning from others, but we also rely on guidance. You showed me what to notice, what to respect. That's why it worked." Lyra's expression softened. "I understand, and I am grateful. Your presence has reminded me that understanding and trust are not bound by species or origin. Even outsiders can have value beyond what we expect." Elias glanced around the docking bay. Crew members from various species had begun to gather quietly, observing the farewell. He could see admiration in their eyes, a recognition of what humans could bring to any environment. Not brute strength, not control, but intelligence, empathy, and adaptability. "You have left a mark," Lyra said. "Not only on me, but on the station. Others have noticed your contributions." Elias shook his head gently. "I hope they notice because it matters, not for recognition. Humans act because it's the right thing to do, but it is rewarding to see that action respected." Lyra stepped closer, gesturing toward the ship. "Will you return?" Elias hesitated. "I don't know. Space is vast and my journey may take me far, but if the station needs help and if circumstances allow, I would come back." She nodded, a soft glow of understanding in her eyes. "Then perhaps this is not farewell. Perhaps it is a pause in a longer story, one that may continue." Elias looked at her, realizing the truth in her words. The bond formed through shared effort, respect, and collaboration was not something easily broken by distance or time. What they had achieved together would ripple through the station, through the crews, and perhaps beyond. "I have learned a great deal here," he said, "about machines, about routines, and most importantly, about trust. Humans often learn by doing, but it helps when we have someone to guide us. You did that, Lyra." She inclined her head slightly. "And I have learned about humans. Your thoughtfulness, your courage, and your ability to adapt. Not all humans would have faced the unexpected with such calm. You impressed me." A small group of personnel quietly gathered near the docking bay. Some nodded in respect. Others offered brief gestures of acknowledgement. Elias returned each one with a humble smile. This was not about praise, but about showing that humans could act with intelligence, empathy, and skill even in worlds far from their own. Lyra extended her hand in a formal gesture, which Elias accepted with care. "Safe travels," she said. "And remember, humans are capable of more than many realize. I will tell others what you have shown." Elias nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "And I will remember what you taught me, about patience, precision, and respect, about how small actions can make a big difference." The boarding ramp lowered and Elias stepped toward his ship. He glanced back one last time at Lyra, at the maintenance room, at the quiet hum of EOS Prime. The station had been a place of learning, testing, and connection, and he felt pride in the mark he had left, not in dominance or power, but in collaboration and understanding. As the ramp retracted, he felt a gentle breeze from the ship's engines and the faint warmth of the twin suns above. Lyra waved, her figure glowing softly, a quiet symbol of what trust, care, and partnership could achieve. Elias waved back, a small smile crossing his face. The ship lifted from the docking bay, moving slowly at first, then accelerating into the calm expanse of space. Below, EOS Prime continued its steady rhythm, but now with a small spark of change, a subtle recognition that humans could bring more than technology. They brought empathy, ingenuity, and a willingness to connect. Elias watched the station fade into the distance, reflecting on the journey. In the midst of alien systems, unpredictable problems, and unfamiliar cultures, humans had proven their worth not through force, but through the simplest and most powerful acts: observation, care, and collaboration. And as the stars stretched into streaks of light ahead, Elias felt confident that this was only the beginning. One human, one alien, one station. Together they had created something extraordinary. And somewhere in the universe, other worlds would soon discover the quiet, remarkable power of humans who notice, act, and inspire. Lyra's voice echoed softly in his memory. Humans are capable of more than many realize. Elias smiled to himself, knowing that across the stars humanity's story was far from over.